I remember Luke had a minivan back then.
I did have the minivan, which is very popular in college. It was a 98 Sienna minivan with shag carpet in the background.
I feel like people knew you and they also knew the van, and sometimes they were like independent of each other. Like,
yeah.
It's funny how people, especially in your youth, you're recognized for your vehicle more than anything else, I think.
It's like when you're growing up, I feel like you have all those different things, in college included, like how to identify. Like for me, it was music. Like at my like when I was a kid, I was like, oh, I have to have this like punk aesthetic.
So I combined the music persona and the car persona. I had a Bronco and I just labeled it Biscuit after Limp Bizkit, which was the best.
I was like, I was waiting for the connection. I'm like, what? Just had an affinity for B&G, the classic Southern breakfast. My car was biscuits and my ladies was gravy. Hey everybody, welcome back to Deep Dark Well. Today we have a very special guest, our buddy and a very talented man, Luke McMahon. He is a co-owner of Bird Mountain. He runs that with Jennifer Bird. They are kind of like a full service thing. You guys, I mean, you plan, shoot, edit, you do a little bit of everything, but we've also had the honor of having you guys help us make a handful of short films. I mean, and we met at school and we'll get into all that, but we sort of have a long history together of, getting through school, making some films and kind of on and on. So Luke, welcome to the podcast chat. Happy to have you here. And
yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. I've known Jason and Kyle almost 16 years now. So this has been a long time coming.
16 years ago, that was SCAD. How did you meet?
So the way we first met that I recall is I was probably a sophomore and these guys were just getting into their senior thesis when they were working on ink blots. And I was looking to get on any cruise that I could at that point. I was really wanting to get into the sort of the bigger filmmaking. And I sort of was looking for the big productions. And they had one of the biggest productions that year. And I didn't quite know, grip, electric camera, what I wanted to do. But I had a camera of my own. And I was like, hey, can I do the documentary stuff for you guys, the behind the scenes? Because I loved watching DVD behind the scenes when they used to have those. So I was like following these guys around for pretty much the entire production. And I was learning stuff and filming and got in all kinds of wild situations with these guys. And that's when we first met.
That's a lie. We actually all worked on a set before Inkblots. I did not work in Inkblots, but we all worked on Come On Calvin.
Oh, we did.
Me, you, and Jason did.
I'm always interested to know, like, what was the moment, if you can recall, or the movie, whatever it is, that sort of got you hooked into this idea of like, this is the thing I want to do for the rest of my life. If there is one, maybe there wasn't at that time.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I always take it back. Even before high school, I had a very early age. I knew that I had a learning difference. I was really bad at reading and writing. So I have dyslexia and I had ADHD. So those two combined superpowers made me really creative, but I really struggled in sort of a traditional school sense with tests and papers and things like that. So one of my teachers, it was a sort of a more progressive school. They gave me a choice. They were like, you can rent the school's camera, the library camera, and you can do a little movie project on this subject, or you could write a paper. And I immediately was like, I don't want to write a paper because I'm terrible at that. So I grabbed the school. It was like a handy cam. I think I actually have it on my shelf back there still. Is this little Sony handy cam. And me and my friends, we had no idea what we were doing, but we put a CD player on in the background for the music track. And we sort of ran around. It was a classic spy movie type thing that we made. But that's when I first sort of got into the love of like how to use a tool to tell a story, because I couldn't write my stories down very well. I couldn't convey them. And I really liked telling the story. So picking up a camera for the first time, I realized that I could use this and it could be a really great tool to sort of share different experiences or different things that other people might not be able to experience. And from there, I sort of followed that track and I learned. I've started on iMovie, and then I did the original iMovie back on the old colored Macintoshes. And I went from there. We finally got into the original Final Cut before they ruined it.
You heard it here, folks.
You did. When they came out with Final Cut 10, I was done for. Absolutely not. That was end of the line. Stopped using it after that. But I did a little bit in high school. I took one or two small classes, and then I did a summer camp at North Carolina School of the Arts. And the summer camp was at their college. It was like almost pretty much a college level class during the summer. And that's when I got really hooked. North Carolina School of the Arts has a really interesting backlot. It's like a street with shops, and it has a movie theater, and you can film on it. And we had access to all their gear. And this is, back when the DVX 100 was like the best camera you could pretty much get at our level. This is before Red. This is before, really right before the DSLR revolution happened. So we were just able to have access to a lot of great technology. And I really got into it that summer. I was making movies. I finally figured out how to script. And I was really getting into the camera and lighting aspect of it. And right towards the end of college, or towards the end of high school, I looked around at colleges, and that's when I discovered SCAD. I originally wanted to go to North Carolina School of the Arts. However, they denied me because I had really poor standardized test scores. I didn't have good SAT scores, and I didn't have a good written essay. I had a recommendation from the dean of students from the class that I took that summer, and several students that were also taking that classes, but they didn't accept me. So SCAD was actually my secondary option. And I'm kind of glad that I did, because I ended up getting a pretty decent scholarship to SCAD. And I think that ultimately they led me in a better direction than I would have if I had stayed at North Carolina School of the Arts.
What I got from that story was that you stole the camera that belonged to your high school.
No, I ended up, big periods of time, I definitely had it on loan for an extended period of time.
Yeah,
sure.
and I'm kidding. Obviously, there's much more to it.
It still is on loan.
Stepping back, though, I want to, it's interesting because I think so many of us like that have been making movies, have that sort of like doing this since whatever age, like even when you first start doing it, you're figuring those things out. Like how you said you would play like the music in the background with the CD. Cause I remember doing similar things where my technique was I would edit it first, and then I would play it on a TV, and I would set up my camera on a tripod and then record the TV while I then played music in the background. Yeah. And it's just so funny because like now it's like such an easy thing to drop a music. It's just all these things that were like, hours of time, and you were trying to like, white balance and like figure out how to set the exposure right in your camera so it looked okay. But I remember even like the class projects, that was always a point of excitement when they were like, oh, you could write a thing or do like, can we make a movie? Like, is that a thing?
We did so many projects that were movie based. We got a whole class credit for doing sort of like a video yearbook in middle school.
No, I'm much older than y'all, so I got the chance to do that one time my senior year.
That's when they just started inventing film, right? They just Edison just came out with the moving pictures. Yeah.
Too, I think all of us sort of went through this at the similar time where technology was constantly changing. I remember starting out on VHS cameras, editing tape to tape. And then I remember mini DV coming out and being able to connect and download to the computer for the first time and edit that way instead, and made it so much easier. It was a very interesting time to be starting all of this and experimenting with all of this.
And now when you shoot on mini DV, you're like, how do I get this on the
computer? I know. We just had this problem.
What do I do with this?
Flawless transition into talking about, just to reference it quickly. So Luke, we just shot 2 short films together. One Josh directed, one I directed. And we used some mini DV for Josh's thing. And it is interesting because I feel like going back to what you were saying about like, wanting to sort of be creative and things, like, especially like to where you come now, like what has changed for you and like what hasn't changed? Like, there's obviously like that idea of like, just the thrill of going out with your buddies and making a movie. And that's something I think we all cling to and we've talked about, but I'm curious for you, like, what is that thing that sort of keeps you doing it?
I think the thing that sort of keeps me going is like back in the day, like I would watch, the classic 90s sort of genre of films. Those movies I still think they can't be beat. The films that came out during the 80s, 90s, and very early 2000s just can't be beat in terms of the look, the aesthetics, the characters, the storyline, everything. Just, it was so unique. I feel like everything now is a little bit of a recycle, and it has a kind of a similar look that it's good, but it's not great. So back in the day, I would always try to chase, like, how do I make it look like, like that film, like that I just saw? Like, I was always trying to like strive to like make it look like that. And now that I've sort of like matured and grown up and learned some things, like I understand how it's done more in terms of the process and cameras and lights and stuff like that. And I don't want to make it look necessarily like the big, Hollywood movies now. Now I just want to actually make it for fun and make it like entertaining and like have a good story and have a interesting, maybe one really technical, interesting shot that I can pull off that maybe no one's seen before. So that's what sort of keeps me going, is like that new look, that new shot, something different, something that someone might look back on in 20 years. Like I look back at films in the 90s and I'm like, oh, that shot is still holding up. That shot is still really good. I want to, or that character is still what I strive my characters to look like. That's what I always try to do whenever I try to make a film. Like, can I try to get at least one frame, one shot that it's going to like stand the test of time? For
our last couple of films, did you get anything that you feel like that's a shot?
Were you satisfied with the last one?
There was a couple shots in particular. One shot from Jason's film, it wasn't necessarily like frame. It was a pretty easy like 2-shot, but the way that we had to get it, I had to be on the ground inside of a cabinet because I only had 2 lenses that I had to work with. I had a 28 and a 50, and the 28 is just not a great lens if you want to get a wide shot. It's not a great lens in general, but I was working with these old vintage Nikkor lenses that I had. So I had like 2 lenses to work with. So we really wanted to get a profile 2-shot, and I had to get on the ground, and we essentially were in a cat food cabinet in Jason's kitchen. So I shoved myself as far back into the cabinet on the ground as possible to operate this shot. And I don't know, that's just kind of like a fun, like unique, like no one else is ever going to be in his house with that camera, with that lens inside of the cabinet.
Joke's on you, you're the 5th one to do that.
Well, I love stuff like that too, because like, to me, that it's like, I mean, no spoilers because the film isn't even out and who knows when it'll be out, but like, it's a very like heavy moment in the film done in such a silly, like, I just remember like looking over and you're just sitting. I think about that every time I feed my cats every morning. I look there and I go, Luke was in there.
And then for Josh's film, I've always wanted to get a really interesting split diopter shot. I know Josh was also really into wanting to try this, and I had one that I bought years and years ago, and I'd never been able to use it because I usually do a lot of corporate stuff, and corporate people don't want to make it look interesting at all. So, but we were able to do a really great shot in a bedroom scene. It was just a single close up of an actress on a bed, and it just I could have been on that shot for 4 hours. It was just it was a really like almost Captain Kirk style, like just the eyes and just like a little buzzed on the bottom. And it's just something about that just really like spoke to me in terms of a shot angle.
Yeah, it was instantly my favorite shot of the film.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of 70s cinema and Brian De Palma in general. So if I can get a split diopter shot in the film, I'll write a movie for that shot, because we didn't know when we were going to use it. Right. We just know we knew we were going to use it. So it was really interesting.
That's the first shot I cut in the edit.
Son of a bitch. On the floor.
Yeah. And that is how Heebie-Jeebies became no more. No, it was a great shot. And that was a fun shoot. The first Heebie-Jeebies Pictures, since we've retconned them all under one banner, was Little Dreamer. How did that come about?
That was like right after I got to Atlanta. I did a small stint in North Carolina. Me and my wife, we moved there, and then we came back to Atlanta sort of looking for work. And I think it was kind of happenstance. We got talking with Jason and Kyle, and we were doing a couple other smaller projects together, corporate wise. And then we were like, hey, let's get together and do Little Dreamer. And it was right when I started to get into like sort of cinema level cameras and lighting and stuff like that. So it was a great opportunity for me to sort of try out some different things and flex. And yeah, it was a really great film to sort of start that journey together.
I think so too. I think it stands out from the other films. It's a very dark film and dark in lighting as well.
It is very dark. And the reason that it's dark,
Not in a bad way.
No. The reason that it's dark is I had hardly any lighting back then. I didn't own, I always am, I'm always hesitant to go to rental houses or to borrow gear from friends because I don't know the state of it. I don't know like the quality. It's the whole like going to a rental house, picking it up, all this kind of stuff. So I'm a big component of like own and use what you have in the moment. Don't try to like overextend yourself. Don't try to, go out and rent a bunch of stuff that you don't know how to use or you haven't used before. So we had a pretty basic lighting package back then when we shot that. And it showed because a lot of the hallway scenes are very dark. A lot of the exterior scenes, I had to keep it very shallow and shoot like very long lens just so we could just not have to light certain areas. But it's a good challenge to sort of try to make a film with a 3-point lighting package, essentially.
I think it served the film well, the story well, but I also think it's a testament to like indie filmmaking. It's like using what you have in order to make the story work.
It's always interesting to me how you do that, where you've been able to use, and sorry, Kyle, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but where you're using the resources you have, it's almost more liberating than like having too much, because like I feel like when you sort of have the tools laid out, it's like, okay, I know I can do this, this, and this. I maybe can't do that, but then I can, get creative here, as opposed to maybe having an endless. Now, don't get me wrong, the day that if Hollywood ever comes knocking and they're like, here's all this money. Sure. Luke, here's all this money. Take it.
I honestly, like the money thing, like if someone were to approach me and be like, you have endless amounts of money, I'm not going to go out and get a Arri Alexa 35 and a Fisher Dolly and all that stuff. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to like really figure out what we need to make the shoot work. And I'm going to pay the crew full rates. That's the first thing I'm going to do.
We're going to have the best damn food on any film.
I'm going to take care of everybody. Like it's about the people. It's not about the gear. So like
100%. Yeah.
I always try to figure out like what we can do that'll make it look as good with as little amount of extra fluff as possible.
It feels like it goes against what we learned in film school. The kind of the idea of just using what you have or trying to use practical lights or, a very small lighting kit. It almost seems like, every time we do that, I'm kind of like, oh, like, isn't that bad? But it's not. I mean, for the reasons that you just said, like it doesn't really matter about that. It matters how you execute the project. It matters how you bring everything together. Much, much more than the type of gear that you have.
Yeah. We should just make everything on an iPhone.
Right.
Screw it.
Some interesting advice, Luke, and I'm curious, obviously, with you being a cinematographer, if you've heard this or have an opinion on this. Like, of the 3 shorts we shot this month, one of them, Josh and I DP'd. I'm using air quotes if you're just listening. But I think one of the things that we found and stuff we've heard before is like, it's not always about how many lights you can add into the scene. Sometimes it's about what ones you can turn off. I specifically, I guess, for like genre or horror films, like, where does that line go with like, adding light versus removing light?
I mean, horror, I think, is one of the best genres in terms of an indie market because you can go dark. You can go with barely any lighting or no lighting at all. We were doing several scenes within a house and I didn't have a crew at all to light every single window that you see in the background. So a lot of times I just had to like close a blind or like just let that window go to daylight. Or just throw in a little negative fill in here. So comedy, I would say, would probably be the hardest thing to do because comedy is usually very bright and airy, and it's very difficult to sort of get that look if you're not big lights and sort of big bright sets. It's a little harder to get kind of like a traditional comedy look out of that. So the horror genre and also the documentary world is sort of where my background lies, is like 2 of my favorites because it's a lot of like use what you got, and even if you don't got it, use something in the room. There was a couple shots where we didn't have the time and I didn't want to like go crazy late into the night, so I was like, those practical lights that are in there, they might not be the best CRI, but heck, we're just going to turn them on. I'm going to expose a little bit down for them and we're going to light the scene with that. We're going to move on because it's more important for the actors to get 3 or 4 takes than for me to fix that tiny little light bulb way in the background that no one's going to care about.
Speaking of your documentary, what skills have you taken from? Do you find that transferable? I have not to the extent you and Jen have, but I've worked in documentary films and the corporate marketing kind of world. as well. What kind of skills have you seen that are transferable into narrative filmmaking?
For documentary filmmaking, it's always a lot of times you go into environments, any type of environment, and you have no idea what it looks like beforehand. And in the indie market, a lot of times it's similar, where you'll walk into a scene and you might not have location scouted it. You might not have had a lot of time in pre-production, and you have to sort of be quick and on the fly, and how you can sort of get the right angle, get the right lighting, or use what lighting you have. Just like in documentary, a lot of times it's just you and the camera, and you don't have a lighting technician. You don't have a grip or an electric with you to help. So I think it's that sort of just on the fly unpredictability and flexibility to sort of work within whatever environment that you're thrown into.
I know a little bit about it, but like when we talked and we said like, hey, we're going to do this together, like where do you go from getting the script to, you know, having our initial discussions to actually being on set and having sort of that idea in mind? Like, is there any like general steps you take, like whether it's specific to the project or not?
For any sort of short film or feature film or sort of narrative based film, I try to sit down with my wife and we sort of talk through the script. Again, like being pretty heavily dyslexic and not being able to sort of do, you know, reading processing very well, we sort of like, I like to talk it out with her. So Jen and I, we talk about the scenes, we talk about the characters, we talk about, you know, roughly how many locations we're going to look at, what it's going to sort of take to sort of accomplish this in a time window that's reasonable. And those are sort of the initial steps that like my brain goes to. And then it sort of follows after we've sort of figured those initial things out. It's like, well, what camera or lens is going to be appropriate for this environment, or what sort of genre we're filming. And then it goes into what gear or lighting that we need to sort of accomplish the look that we want to go for. For the two that we just did, I had just come off of several weeks of corporate traveling and filming of different. I literally just spent almost an entire week as a photographer doing sort of photographing different restaurant venues around the country. So going from like a photography world for almost an entire week, and then jumping back in and doing some commercial stuff, and then pretty much having like a 1-day transition going back into narrative. It's sort of that like, you got to be flexible. The documentary style, you really have to be flexible. But I think for these two films in particular, it worked really well, because sometimes I can be an over planner. I can really sort of get locked into, it has to be this way. I have to shoot it with this lens. I have to shoot it with this light. And if it doesn't happen, then I get flustered or upset, or I get like, we didn't get that shot, or I get really disappointed. But I tried to really I knew that it was going to be a tight schedule. And I was like, I got to be open. I got to be like, let's just think outside the box. Let's just like, I kept sort of, whenever we started at the top of a scene, I would go to Josh or Jason and I would say, hey, what's happening in this scene? What's the major action? What are the characters doing? Where do you want them to enter, exit? What's the sort of action that's happening during the scene? And then from there, I'd sort of build it in my head, like camera's going to go here, lights are going to go here. We can use this move to sort of motivate this movement out or into the scene. And having that flexibility is really important whenever you're doing sort of the sort of indie style.
Yeah, it always amazes me when we go to set and you have these lofty ideas and you get locked into something that you think is going to end up this way. And then you realize, oh, I got 10 hours. Everything goes out the window. We start over.
That was like the biggest, I think, learning. It was a curve for a while. It's certainly not anymore. But I think like just being open to the idea that like you're always sort of striving for what you want. You have something in your head, but then that also sometimes can alienate collaboration and stuff if you're just strictly. Now, if you've had those discussions together where you're trying to, collaboratively find that's a different story. But I think one thing I've learned as a filmmaker that I really cherish now is just the idea of kind of being open to, not necessarily anything and everything, still having like a vision that obviously aligns with you, but just knowing that like you're good at what you do. You're here with the same passion I am, and know way more about this stuff than I ever will. So like, I trust you to know, like, and it's exactly what you said. Like, I know you've already done the work and you and Jen have gone through the script, and shout out to Jen really quick too. So your wife, Jen, is a talented director in her own right, co-owns the company with you. She was pulling focus for us on these shorts and was a dynamite. I always have so much respect for people that can do that, because I would just be on the wheel, like The whole short's out of focus.
I threw a curveball on this one too. Like I literally the night before I was going to put her on these other lenses, and I changed completely the night before. I was like, I want to try something crazy, and I literally I have some still vintage glass that have been on my shelf for years, and I just have the 28 and the 50, and I was like, here, grab these lenses. I want to try these. And I put her in a tough situation, but she's always great in terms of being flexible.
Nailed it, though.
And nailed it. Yeah.
She told me my job is focus, and she executed on that job.
Well, it's always stuff like that. You don't necessarily, at least for me personally, I don't necessarily think about like the time, like, okay, this scene has a moving camera, there's characters moving around the scene. So now we have, no matter what, we have multiple focus points, in however many positions they're going to be in. So it's like you're already adding these things. Like in my head, I'm just picturing these shots, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to move here, we're going to move here. And it's gotten better nowadays with you can recreate lensing on, your phone somewhat accurately with different apps and things. But like, it was always funny to me, especially making movies as a kid, because I would draw really terrible storyboards and then have nowhere near the ability to recreate that shot, even as crappy as the storyboard was.
Yeah, after doing this again, DP job on Dag Nabbit. I have so much respect for Jen for the focus. There's a scene, it's one of the finer scenes in Dag Nabbit that he's ready to go. It was a blood effect thing, and we were losing air in the tank. So I was like, let me quickly check focus. And I went in there and checked it and tweaked, and then we hit record, and then we watched it on playback, and it was completely out of focus.
The heartbreaking moment, though, was that it was in perfect focus.
Before I messed with it.
And then you hear you off camera go, wait a second. And then you see the camera shake and dial it out of focus.
But to your point, Josh and Jason, it's important, even if you label yourself as a director, editor, producer, to try and do it solo like you guys did. You really should experience every single job and every single position, so that way you have more respect for that position when you do have the ability to hire a crew. But when you do have that crew, you also need to have that trust, like you were talking, Jason, with that crew member. You need to be able to trust them that they can execute their job, just like they need to in turn give it back to you and trust you that you can direct the talent, or have things arrive on time or whatever it is. But having that sort of all around sort of knowledge of every department. I don't really like working with directors or producers in particular who've I've never shot anything. I've never picked up a camera. I've only ever directed all these big things. And I'm like, I don't quite trust you, because you haven't been at the level that I've had to work with, or you've never had to physically hold the camera on your shoulder for 14 hours or something like that. So having that sort of mutual respect is important on set, and you can gain that by humbling yourself. Go be a PA on a big set. Go, run coffee for someone, or go try camera operating on a indie short or something like that. Even if you think you're just a director or just a producer or just a writer or an editor, even try out those positions so you can really learn it.
I think there's different opinions on whether or not going to a film school is necessary. And I think one of the things you get out of going to film school is that you get to try out all the different positions. You get to do all the different things, so that you can experience those things. The other lesson is you also learn to trust people in that setting. You learn that you can't do it all yourself, and that you have to rely on the different crew members that are part of the team. And for me, I know I've mentioned it before, but that was a huge lesson that came out of film school, was that, hey, this everyone else wants it to look good too. Trust them to do their thing. That's what they're there for.
We talked a little bit about what keeps you going and stuff, but there's a difference between sort of doing this for a living and doing it as a passion. And sometimes, you're lucky enough to have those things intersect. And some people are happy to do one or the other, and it's fine. But for you, I'm curious, you've got a full on business with your wife and things. How do you manage sort of operating that on a day-to-day basis and sort of managing that life, work, passion balance?
It's really hard to sort of make filmmaking a full-time job. And I always knew it was going to be really challenging. And in school, they sort of put you on the path of especially for camera, they put you on the path of go to a rental house, start in a rental house. You'll get to know camera assistants. You might get on as a PA. Then you spend 10 years as a second, 10 years as a first, and then maybe you'll get to DP something by the time you're 45 or 50. And when I got out of school, I was like, okay, yeah, I trust my professors entirely. Let's go down that route. And I sort of did that. I got it. I was really lucky, and I got on a union show early on that flipped. So I was a second AC in the union, and I did that off and on for about 6 years. I was freelancing and doing union shows as a camera assistant. And I was literally picking up, when I wasn't doing a union level show, I was doing Craigslist ads. I was going and film fireworks displays. I was filming. I did a couple. I think Kyle recommended me for a wedding of his friend in like South Carolina one time, a swamp wedding.
I remember
so I
that.
It was a great wedding. I had a nice like beer boat. It was fantastic.
I want to know more about this swamp wedding.
God, I love
beer in
redneck
the
weddings.
canoe. Yes, I remember that.
It was a great wedding. But in terms of making a career out of this, I think that you have to have the understanding that it's not going to be what you see on Instagram. It's not going to be the glamorous lifestyle that you probably see in your
except on Heebie-Jeebies Pictures.
It is. What you see on Instagram is the good stuff. No, what you see on Instagram is only the highlights. It really is. You don't see the creating the business, the paying the taxes, the long periods of not working. And I think that's the hardest thing for me. And that's what I've seen a lot of people is they can't fathom these week, month, half year long periods where you might go without any work, and you have to have either a safety net, a savings plan, or you have to have the ability to be like, I'm going to eat rice and beans for the next 3 weeks, and we're not going to go out to Starbucks. We're not going to go out on vacations, and you have to grind, and you have to cut your expenses as low as you can. And living that lifestyle is hard for most people. And that's filmmaking. You have to make extreme sacrifices in your personal life, I think, in order to make it a full-time career. And it's very difficult. And I've definitely had several moments in my career where Jen and I remember one in particular where we were sitting in the parking lot after a set being like, I don't know if we can do this as a career. We really had to turn to ourselves and be like, it was a really rough corporate set where it was a low paying job. And we turned to ourselves and we were just treated very poorly. And it had been going on for a couple months that we had been working for them. And we were like, should we get a regular job? Should we get into a different field? And you go through these moments of questioning yourself, and you have to outlast everyone else. You have to continue it. You have to persevere, and you have to move forward. But you have to have that flexibility, like I was talking about earlier, the flexibility to go to different careers, to shift different places with the industry as it moves. Whereas 1 month or 1 year, it might be, we did a bunch of real estate videos. The next year it was healthcare. The year after that, it was transportation. Next year, we have no idea where the winds are going to turn. So you need to be able to be flexible as a filmmaker, if anything.
Flexibility, though, I think that is such a powerful trait and tactic to have. I think that it makes you, if you are flexible, whether it's flexible on what kind of work you're doing, flexible during those jobs, to changing conditions, I think that makes you so much more adaptable and so much more able to weather any sort of shifts or changes or complications that come up. I mean, from both a tactical filmmaking sense, but also like a strategic industry level sense. And yeah, I think the people who are the most flexible about that, are the most open to change, are the ones who are going to find success in that.
And you got to have the passion at the end of the day. Like, all three of you guys, like I can sense that you still, even though you guys have a quote unquote corporate job that's still in your fields, you guys still bring that passion to every set that I've ever been on with you guys. And that's the kind of people that you want to be with. You don't want to be on a set where someone is like, I'm just here to make a paycheck, or I'm just here because I just want to show up and kind of mess around a little bit, or like kind of goof off or whatever. You need to find people who are like, this is more than just like a fun thing to do. This is like this is their passion. Like, you got to find those groups of people.
Well, there's a reason there's multiple reasons we keep our crew small. One is
Yeah.
we like to work with a small set. The other ones is there's not a lot of people here that's passionate about it, that want to put in that work ethic.
Because we have no choice.
And it costs a fortune to feed people.
It costs so much to feed people.
Food is always, but that's because like the two things you can't go cheap on is like safety and food, you know?
And, I'm past the point of like wanting to eat, being able to eat cheap food on set. Like I want to eat well on set. So that means everybody else has to as well.
But Luke and I, we had this discussion. We will smash a pizza on set. We have no qualms.
Oh,
there's that taboo about pizza on set, but we're like, nah, dude.
I will have a pizza as long as it's a good pizza. As long as it's a good pizza, like as long as it's not some trash pizza. But like if you have a spindrift and a pizza on set, that's all. I'll take that. Any
Hell,
day.
I'd even eat a trash pizza. I don't know. I love pizza.
I eat better in our sets than I do at home. Like
Same,
I feed we pick the better. Like
as the one responsible for the catering, usually I'm going to take that as a compliment.
You do a very good job. You make sure that Kyle, you're the unsung hero of the film sets. You keep things rolling, and you don't often get enough praise as the behind the scenes producer guy. But I mean, if you hadn't have done what you did in the last few sets, we would have all been angry, hungry, and violent, probably.
It's definitely something I look forward to. I mean, me and Jen, we're not going out to eat every night. When we do indie sets with y'all, it's like, we know we're going to get fed well. It's like, ooh.
Bird Mountain Media. Like, how did y'all settle on that?
Bird Mountain Media was born between Jen's last name, Bird, and we are big components of outside, going into nature. And that's where I sort of get a lot of recharge because I'm around tech all the time. I'm around cameras and lights and screens and screens and screens and screens and screens. So going out into nature, going out into the mountains is really where I was able to sort of recharge the creative energy. So Bird Mountain. And then the media came in. We didn't want to be films because we felt like films really limited us to just making narrative-based films. So media sort of spoke to us in terms of like, well, we can do films, but we could also do a lot of corporate stuff. Production also felt like a word that was really limiting us to sort of just to a certain type of filmmaking, if you will. So media allows us to do everything from real estate commercial photography to corporate commercials to documentaries to feature length film. Like almost everything was under sort of the media genre in our mind. So that's why we sort of stuck with the media tab.
I feel like I'm the same way. Like my wife and I, we've been in this house, I guess, going on 3 years, but like I've always been somewhat outdoorsy and things, but like, especially now having space for like things like a garden and thing. Like I found myself like finding reasons to go like outside more because you like my life, my work, my passion has me literally sitting right here in front of this, screen pretty much as long as I can do it throughout the day to get things done. So it's interesting that we do have a hot tub. That helped. Yeah.
Yes.
That helps get outside. But it is interesting because I think that is an important aspect too, is like when you're in it all the time, there's so much of a benefit to me to like not even just giving your eyes a break, but giving your brain a break. Like I feel like it's very hard to be full steam creative all the time. And sometimes I feel like if I just go for a walk or I go like pretend like I know what I'm doing in the garden in the backyard for 20 minutes, and then I come back in, I'm like, all of a sudden that thing I couldn't think of or that like issue with the edit I was having is incredibly clear because like when you are in it all the time and you're this zoned in, it's like you have to be able to step back every now and then and give yourself some perspective every now and then.
It's really difficult because in school, we were really taught that you have to grind, and the harder you work, the more you're going to make, and the more you make, the happier you're going to be, which is a complete lie. It's not about the money. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about the time that you can get to spend with either the person or partner that you love, or being able to have a life outside of the work that you feel like you have to do all the time. And for us, the time that we get to take off of work, a lot of times we feel guilty about it. We are like today we went for a walk in the park, and the whole time I was there, I was like, I should be chasing a lead or doing some research on a new piece of gear. And I had to remind myself, like, it's okay to take that moment for yourself. But damn, is it hard when you're like worried about bills and you're worried about where the next paycheck's coming from. Like, I don't know what I'm like my schedule next week. I have no idea what's going to happen. A huge client can call or nobody could call. And having sort of the calmness is and to get that calmness, I have to be able to go out into nature, into the woods, into the backyard, wherever it is, and stop thinking about it. And that's the only way I can recharge and sort of refresh myself.
There was a quote that I always sort of like live by, and to this day I still live by it, which is like that idea of like, did you do something today to get you closer to whatever that end goal is? Which for me personally would, to be writing and directing feature films full time. And it's not always something that gets done. But I also think that, being able to spend 1 minute on something, like I think sometimes it's even like as simple as, writing a quick idea down in a notepad, and that was enough. And that's definitely something I've struggled with, I think, over the years, is like finding that line between like, how much work or how little work is going to really help set me up. Like sometimes that mental break does way more for me than, staring at the laptop for 4 hours until 1 a.m. and being like, oh, I didn't do anything.
I get more work done, like especially creative story work done, not away from a computer. It's doing the other stuff. It's when the idea comes or the breakthrough comes. If I'm staring at a screen, it's going to be blank all night.
Do you guys find that after filming, like what we filmed the other day, do you guys find that you like to jump directly into an edit, or do you find that like sometimes it's really helpful to literally not look at any of the footage for like a week or two? I find that sometimes that's more creative.
Well, I don't edit our stuff.
So he never looks at it again.
I
don't even watch the finished movie.
My job's done.
Get out of here.
This time, since we did 3 this month, I walked away from there telling them I didn't want to speak to him for a month. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we talked for about 2 weeks.
7 years.
I think it was 2 weeks that we needed to take a break. But Jason, I don't know. You took about a week or so off.
I always take a week. Right? No matter what,
yeah.
I always take a week because I have to separate that director mentality. Because there's always shots you get on set. And I was joking about it earlier, like the split diopter thing. But that is something that happens every now and then. Like, sometimes you spend, especially if you spend a lot of time on set and it maybe costs you a shot or two, and it's like, well, I got to put this in because this will disappoint so and so, or I'll feel like But if I can separate myself,
we spent so much on this.
Yeah. And I won't saying I don't care is making it seem insensitive. But like when I get into that editor mindset, I don't. It's more about like what tells the story in the best way. For me, it's sort of like just giving my body time to get away from anything I might have gotten attached to. Generally speaking, we don't necessarily shoot a ton of coverage.
No, I shot more coverage than this one than I haven't.
You had some more dialogue scenes. I feel like with dialogue scenes, that just tends to happen. But in general, I think it's A, you know what you want, which is useful. But then it's also B, like, on these smaller indie sets, so you don't have time to necessarily shoot, all this insane amount of coverage, like as much as you would maybe for like a corporate shoot where you're also protecting yourself against like, well, the client might come back and have this kind of nose, so we should get this angle as well, as opposed to like I only need this one angle of Brett getting his head cut off. This is just never going to need to see it from another angle.
That's one thing I love about narrative filmmaking as opposed to corporate is like, you guys might felt like you had a lot of coverage, Josh, but like every shot to me was like something I'm like, oh, maybe 1 or 2 of these won't be used. But like when I shoot corporate stuff, sometimes it's like 100 to 1. Sometimes I shoot 100 shots and they use 1 shot. And so it's really refreshing to me when I get on a narrative set that like knowing that like most every shot is going to be used, and it makes me more motivated to sort of like make every shot that much better. Whereas like in corporate, it's very difficult to be passionate about every shot because that like 85% of this is probably going to never be seen ever again.
Side note, you have what will be the best camera setup that anyone will ever have on this podcast. There it is. Give me that zoom. That's what the people came for.
So it's funny. This is the same camera we shot both the horrors with, the Canon C70, which I'd highly recommend over any of the red garbage that's out there.
Got him.
Hey. We just shot Dag Nabbit on red.
I can't wait personally to add a bunch of VHS overlays to something we just shot with a 6K camera. Totally justified. We'll set you up for an outro, Luke, but we want you to like, say any socials or website, like basically any shameless plugs you want to do kind of thing. Josh, do you want to set them up?
Luke, tell us your socials.
Set them up better.
If you guys want to follow us a little bit more, I'm always posting a lot of creative content. I work on my grip camera truck a lot, so you can follow me at Luke McMahon.
You just painted it, right?
You just painted it. It looks great.
I just painted it.
It's so
I just
shiny.
put some new racks, new C-stand racks in the back. So it's looking fresh. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a blast to sort of just talk filmmaking. Again, like being able to talk in this type of environment with fellow filmmakers. It's what this industry is all about. And taking the time to do this with y'all has been really fun on a Monday. Usually Mondays are terrible, but this has been awesome. So thank you guys so much for having me.
You're great, man. We love you. We're happy to have you as a friend and as a collaborative partner, but go give them a follow, and we will see you next time on the next episode of Deep Dark. I forgot what the
You forgot what the podcast name was.
I was like, Heebie-Jeebies?